Station covering all of the DMV. This is DC News Now.
And coming up on DC News Now, a DC News Now exclusive. The pilot who survived Sunday's crash in his first television interview, a candid one-on-one with our Joseph Olmo. And later, a dean of students at a DC elementary school arrested and charged with indecent exposure. How the school system is responding. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for the news at noon. I'm Mark Hall, taking a live look outside at our nation's capital. It is a sunny start to our Thursday, but colder and breezy today. It really feels like a real winter day, and meteorologist Damon Matson joined us with the latest check on the forecast. And Damon, we're inching closer to the weekend. What can we expect?
That we are, Mark, and fitting that it got colder out there like it has, because we just flipped the calendars over to December. Mother Nature reminding us all that winter is right around the corner. And technically today is the first day of meteorological winter on top of that. And the big story over the last 24 hours has been the wind. You might have heard it howling around out there last night as it continued to stay very blustery over the overnight hours. But really, we thankfully did not deal with much in terms of any sort of downed trees, power lines damaged from the wind. Back across parts of Garrett County pretty much is where we had the main cluster of wind damage reports, because back across the mountains into Garrett County is where we experienced those highest wind gusts, getting closer to 55, if not 60 miles an hour, at least through the night last night. Now, it certainly has not calmed down out there by any means just yet. We're still dealing with a 10 to 20 mile per hour breeze as we roll on into the afternoon, keeping things a bit breezy, but the worst of the wind gusts have now come to an end. So we've steadily tried to calm those winds down at least a little bit. Wind gusts only peaking around 25 miles an hour for most. But here's the other big story. It certainly has gotten chillier out there as temperatures have tumbled down into the 30s. A few spots have made it back to the 40s, but really that's few and far between. And we'll stay there through the afternoon. The big story here is going to be, as we move ahead toward the weekend, is it expected to warm up, and when will those winds finally start to calm down? We'll let you know in just a bit.
All right, Damon, thank you. Developing now in Maryland, one person is in critical condition after a house fire in Anne Arundel County. It happened off of St. Michael's Drive in Odenton, Anne Arundel County, where firefighters says that one person was taken to the hospital with serious injuries. And smoke and flames are under control. The cause of the fire is still under investigation. And closer to home, nearly 50 people in Laurel, Maryland, are without a home this afternoon after a fire tore through their apartment building. It happened not far from Maryland 197. Prince George's County fire was first on the scene around 2:45 a.m. Firefighters saw flames coming from the roof of the apartment. It took about an hour and a half to get the fire out. A total of 44 people could not stay home last night, and some of them saw the fire and had to watch as it tore through the building.
Pulled up, it was in a ball of flame. Called 911. Couldn't really tell. I smelled like it was burning like electric. So I saw it from 197, hoping it wasn't my building, and it was.
There were no reported injuries. Well, this morning, some good news for drivers who have driven through Maryland. You have more time to make sure that your tolls are paid. The state is extending the grace period for late fees on unpaid tolls. Drivers now have until December 14th. That's in 2 weeks to pay what they owe without a penalty. The grace period was initially supposed to end at midnight. Transportation officials say that they were flooded with people trying to pay at the last minute, so they extended the deadline. Well, new at noon, just weeks after the midterms, eyes are already on the 2024 presidential election and who may challenge former President Donald Trump for the Republican nomination. Among the potential candidates, Maryland Governor Larry Hogan. Last night, Hogan held his second fundraiser, raising more than $1 million, and he also launched a political action committee called Better Path Forward. In the past, Governor Hogan has been a fierce critic of the former president, positioning himself as an alternative to former President Trump. Hogan says that any official decision to run will come after he leaves office next month. Well, Senator Raphael Warnock narrowly leads Herschel Walker in the Georgia Senate runoff, according to the latest Emerson College poll. According to the poll from Emerson, 49% of voters would back Warnock compared to 47% who said they would vote for Walker. for undecided voters, they said that they were leaning toward 51% chose Warnock, pardon me. However, when people were asked who they think would win the runoff, regardless of who they support, the gap grew, with 57% expecting Warnock to win. Well, DC News Now exclusive, the pilot who survived Sunday's plane crash in Maryland recounts the rescue in his very first on-camera interview. Patrick Merkel and his passenger, Janet Williams, made it out alive. This is the second time that he and all of his passengers have survived the plane crash. Merkel admits that he may have been flying too low when his plane became lodged in the cell tower, leaving the dangling in air for 7 hours. Our Joseph Omo sat down with Merkel in a story you will only see here on DC News Now.
If we had been 6 feet either side of that transmission tower, it would have taken off a wing and we would have simply fallen to the ground and perished.
Tonight, for the first time since his name made headlines across the globe, Patrick Merkel telling DC News Now about what it was like crashing his small, single-engine plane into an electrical tower and miraculously living to tell the story.
Every second that we were hanging there, 9/10 of that second I spent worrying about slipping backwards and falling off that tower, and knowing that that would be the end of us.
Merkel was making the trip back from Westchester, New York. His friend Jan on board, the two on approach into the Montgomery County Air Park in Gaithersburg. It was dark, visibility was low, and Merkel admits,
well, quite obviously I was flying too low. So, you know, however I ended up flying too low, I'll have to review that with the FAA and the NTSB.
The crash happening right around 5:30 Sunday night. What followed was an intense rescue operation that took over 7 hours. Merkel telling us he faced some grueling choices.
Rather than slide back down and die hitting the ground, I popped out the windshield, lifted off the dashboard, and was ready to get out of the aircraft and into the superstructure and to get Jan, who was more injured than I was, out of the plane as well, and to wait either up on the superstructure or to come down the ladder, which is on the side of it, to get to the ground. The chief told us, you know, he was concerned that the tower was electrified and that he didn't want us getting into a situation that made it even worse.
So they stayed in the fog, in the dark, and then came along a blistering wind.
And we were asking, did you bring blankets? You know, because, you know, me worried about having to jump out of the airplane. I've opened up the whole canopy, and it's cold up there.
How cold
and
was it up there?
And it's frickin' windy. So it was, and with blood loss, you know, we're getting even colder. So I was very worried about hypothermia for myself and for Jan.
Merkel's son making the trip from Philadelphia the moment he heard about the crash. He made it to the site while his dad was still stuck over 100 feet up.
It was around 9 o'clock when he got the news. By midnight, he was at the scene.
So your son watched you get lowered from a bucket 100 feet up?
Yes, he did.
And as for any reflections, now 3 days after the crash?
It's a miracle. I'm not here because of anything I did right. I'm here because God wants me or Jan or both of us to be around for quite a while longer.
Reporting for DC News Now, I'm Joseph Omo.
Our thanks to Joseph. We're going to have part 2 of our conversation with Patrick Merkel coming up tonight at 5 right here on DC News Now. Well, this afternoon, Jamie Lee White, the dean of a school here in D.C., is facing charges for indecent exposure. Police say it happened at a park in Prince George's County earlier this week. D.C. News Now's Randy Bass was there at Bancroft Elementary School, where he works.
DCPS is responding to the charges brought against Bancroft Elementary School Dean Jamie Lee White. He's been on leave now since Tuesday, and Greenbelt police are calling him a repeat offender, saying they believe he's exposed himself to people at Buddy Attic Lake Park multiple times, most recently earlier this week. Police say he exposed himself to 2 women at the park Tuesday morning. They gave a description of White and the car he was driving, and they were able to track him down. He was put on leave later that day. Now, as of Thursday morning, he's no longer listed on the school's website, but as of Wednesday night, a screenshot shows where he was pictured and listed as the school's dean. We waited outside of Bancroft Elementary as kids went into school for the day, hoping to talk to parents. We talked to some who didn't want to go on camera. They told us he was known as a nice guy and a good counselor to students, but even more parents we talked to tell us they didn't know about it until we told them. Principal Jessica Morales said she had no comment when we tried to talk to her. We tried to talk to neighbors too. They told us they wanted more details before talking on camera. At this point, there's no word on when he could return to school here at Bancroft in Northwest. Remember, Greenbelt police say they think White has done this before. If you've seen him or talked to him at that park in Prince George's County, they want to hear from you. So give them a call or send them an email. For now, reporting in Northwest, I'm Randy Bass, DC News Now.